Hello, my name is Leo and welcome to another reading of the Elder Scrolls. Today we're going to be reading A Dance in Fire, Chapter 5 by Ragan Jarth. So far in our story, our hero, Dominica Scotti, who got fired from a building commission in the Imperial City, came to Valenwood to try to get some contracts for rebuilding and make some money, got ambushed, lost everything, almost got killed, multiple times, quite frankly. We can probably skip all that. And now he is in a town in a small village, actually, with some other refugees after a bunch of Khajiit burned down two villages that he was passing through. And then the Balsamar, the wood elves in a temple somehow summoned like weird spirit monster, a horde of spirit monster things that just killed everyone. And I guess he's still okay, Dominica Scotti. He's alright so far. Alright, let's continue the journey. Actually, wait, before you do that, well, what was the last thing that happened in the last chapter? It was Scotty turned his head on over to bear the cannibalistic orgy knights to perform one of wood. He slung so he got a backpack from a rival building guy, which probably has like gold and contracts in it, so at least he's got his stuff back, or got some stuff. That's it. Alright. Soap! Huh? The forest we love! Straight ahead! Stupid! And a stupid cow! Okay. The voice boomed out so suddenly that Dominica Scotti jumped and stared off into the dim jungle glade from which he only heard animal and insect calls, and the low whistling of wind moments before. It was a queer, oddly accented voice of indiscriminate gender, tremulous in its modulations, but unmistakably human, or at least Elven. An isolated Balsamar, perhaps, with a poor grasp of the Cyriac language. After countless hours of plodding through the dense knot of Valenwood jungle, any voice of slight familiarity sounded wondrous. "Hello?" he cried. "Beetles on any names?" "Certainly, yesterday, yes," the voice called back. "Who, what, and when, and mice?" "I'm afraid I don't understand," replied Scotty, turning towards the bramble tree, thick as a wagon. Where the voice had issued. "But you needn't be afraid of me. My name is Dominica Scotti. I'm a Cyrodiil from the Imperial City. I came here to help rebuild Valenwood after the war, you see, and now I'm rather lost." "Gemstones and grilled slaves! The war!" moaned the voice, and broke down into sobs. "You know about the war? I wasn't even sure how far away from the border I am now," Scotty began slowly, walking towards the tree. He dropped Redguard's satchel to the ground. Why would he do that? And held out his empty hands. "I'm unarmed. I only want to know the way to the closest town. I'm trying to meet my friend, Leonidas Junris, in Sylvanar." "Sylvanar!" the voice laughed. It laughed even louder as Scotty circled the tree. "Worms and wine! Worms and wine! Sylvanar sings for worms and wine!" What does that mean? There was nothing to be found anywhere around the tree. "I don't see you! Why are you hiding?" In frustration, bored from hunger and exhaustion, he struck the tree trunk. A sudden shiver of gold and red erupted from a hollow nook above, and Scotty was surrounded by 6 winged creatures, scarcely more than a few inches long. Wait, are we meeting? Are we meeting like pixies or something? I don't know. We'll find out in a minute. Bright crimson eyes were set on either side of tunnel-like. Oh, that's a word. Protuberances. The animals always open mouths. They were legless, and their thin, rapidly beating, accurate wings accurate rings, seemed poorly constructed to transport their fat, swollen bellies. And yet they darted through the air like sparks from a fire. Whirling about the poor clerk, they began chattering what he now understood to be perfect nonsense. Wines and worms! How far from the border am I? Academic garnishes, and alas, Linnaeus dress! Right, who's talking? Who's talking? I think a bunch of these people are talking. Hello, I'm afraid I'm unarmed. Smoke and flames of the closest town is dear oblivion. What? Swollen a bad meat, and indigo nimbus, but you needn't be afraid of me. Why are you hiding? Why are you hiding? Before I begin to, my friend, love me, ladies, Acudia! Oh, okay, they're copying him. I see. Yeah, that's a thing. Furious with the mimics, Scotty swung his arms, driving them up into the treetops. He stomped back to the clearing and opened up the satchel again. As he had done some hours before, there was still, unsurprisingly, nothing useful in the bag. Oh, really? And nothing to eat in any corner or pocket. A goodly amount of gold. He smiled grimly, as he had done before, at the irony of being financially solvent in the jungle. A stack of neat blank contracts from Lord Vansick's building commission, some thin cord, and an oiled leather cloak for bad weather. At least, Scotty considered, he had not suffered rain. A rolling moan of thunder reminded Scotty of what he suspected for some weeks now. He was cursed. Within an hour's time, he was wearing the cloak and clawing his way through the mud. The trees, which had earlier allowed no sunlight in, provided no shelter against the pounding storm and wind. The only sounds that pierced the pelting of the rain, were the mocking calls of the flying creatures. Flitting just above, babbling their nonsense, Scotty bellowed at them, threw rocks, but they seemed enamored of his company. While he was reaching to grab a promising-looking stone to hurl at his tormentors, Scotty felt something shift beneath his feet. Wet but solid ground suddenly liquefied and became a rolling tide, rushing him forward. Light as a leaf, he flew head over feet overhead, until the mud flow dropped, and he continued forward, plunging down into a river 25 feet below. The storm passed quite as instantly as it had arrived. The sun melted the dark clouds and warmed Scotty as he swam for the shore. There, another sign of the Kajiti incursion into Valenwood greeted him. A small fishing village had stood there once, so recently extinct that it smouldered like a still warm corpse. Dirt cairns that had once housed fish, by the smell of them, had been ravaged, their bounty turned to ash. Rafts of skiffs lay broken, scuttled, half submerged. All the villagers were no more, either dead or refugees far away, or so he presumed. Something banged against the wall of one of the ruins. Scotty ran to investigate. My name is Demonica Scotty, sang the first winged beast. I am a Cyrodiil from the Imperial City. I came here to help rebuild Valenwood after the war, you see, and now I'm rather lost. I swell to maculate Apeneck, agreed one of its companions. I don't see you. Why are you hiding? As they fell into chattering, Scotty began to search the rest of the village. Surely the cats had left something behind, a scrap of dried meat, a morsel of fish, sausage, anything. But they had been immaculate in their complete annihilation. There was nothing to eat anywhere. Scotty did find one item of possible use under the tumbled remains of a stone hut. A bow, and 2 arrows made a bone. The string had been lost, likely burned away in the heat of the fire. but he pulled the cord from Regulus's satchel and restrung it. The creatures flew over and hovered nearby as he worked. The convent of sacred Leonidas Druis. You know about the worm! War. Worms and wine. Circumscribe a golden host ape neck. The fuck is ape neck? I don't know. The moment the cord was taut, Scotty knocked an arrow and swung around, pulling the string tight against his chest. The winged beast, having had experience with archers before, shot off in all directions at a blower. They needn't have bothered. Scotty's first arrow dove into the ground 3 feet in front of him. He swore and retrieved it. The mimics, having likewise had experience with poor archers before, returned at once to hovering nearby and mocking Scotty. Shouldn't have loosed the arrow. You should have just threatened them menacingly. Oh well. On his second shot, Scotty did much better. In purely technical terms, he remembered how the archers in the Phalistanti looked when he pulled himself out from under the Horva's tick, and they were all taking aim at him. He extended his left hand, right hand, and right elbow in a symmetrical line, drawing the bow so his hand touched his jawline, and he could see the creature in his sight, like the arrow was a finger he was pointing with. The bolt missed the target by only 2 feet, but it continued on its trajectory, snapping when it struck a rock wall. Scotty walked to the river's edge. He had only 1 arrow left, and perhaps, he considered, it would be more practical to fly at a slow-moving fish and fire it on that. If he missed, at least there was less chance of breaking the shaft, and he could always retrieve it from the water. A rather torpid, whiskered fish rolled by, and he took aim at it. "My name is Demerga Scotty," one of the creatures howled, frightening the fish away. "Stupid and a stupid cow. Will you dance a dance in fire?" "Ah, turtle drop." Scotty turned and aimed at the arrow as he had done before. This time, however, he remembered to plant his feet as the archers had done, 7 inches apart, knee straight, left leg slightly forward to meet the angle of his right shoulder. He released the last arrow. The arrow also proved a serviceable prong for roasting the creature against the smoking hot stones of one of the ruins. Oh, so he killed it. Good job. Good job, Scotty. Its other companions had disappeared instantly after the beast was slain, and Scotty was able to dine in peace. The meat proved to be delicious, if scarcely more than a first course. He was picking the last of it from the bones when a boat sailed into view from around the bend of the river. At the helm were Bosomer sailors. Scotty ran to the bank and waved his arms. They averted their eyes and continued past. "You bloody callous bastards!" Scotty howled. "Knaves! Hooligans! Ape-necks! Scoundrels!" Ape-necks. Ape-necks. What a weird insult. What does that mean, ape-necks? I don't know. Are there even monkeys in... There are monkeys in the Elder Scrolls. I think in this book series they talked about monkeys, remember? The Nord in the last chapter. Yeah, you're right. A grey whiskered form came out from a hatch, and Scotty immediately recognised him as Griff Mellon, the poet translator he had met in the caravan from Cyrodiil. He peered Scotty's direction, and his eyes lit up with delight. "Demerga Scotty! Precisely the man I'd hoped to see. I want to get your thoughts on a rather puzzling passage in the Morrowind blah. It begins, 'I went weeping into the world, searching for wonders.' Perhaps you're familiar with it?" "I'd like nothing better to discuss the Morrowind blah with you, Griff," Scotty called back. "Would you let me come aboard, though, first?" Overjoyed at being on a ship bound for any port at all, Scotty was true to his word. For over an hour, as the boat rolled down the river past the blackened remnants of Bosomer villages, he asked no questions and spoke nothing of his life over the past weeks. He merely listened to Mellon's theories and Metheric Aldemary esoterica. Esoterica. Interesting word. I know the word esoteric fact, but I've never heard of the word esoterica. The translator was undemanding of his guest's scholarship, accepting nods and shrugs as civilized conversation. He even produced some wine and fish jelly, which he shared with Scotty absent-mindedly, as he expounded on his various theses. Yes, thank you. Finally, while Malin was searching for a reference to some minor point in his notes, Scotty asked, rather off subject, but I was wondering where we're bound. The very heart of the province, Silvernar, Malin said, not looking up from the passage he was reading. It's somewhat bothersome, actually. I wanted to go to Woodhearth first to talk to a Bosmer there who claims to have an original copy of Dearth Yamilad, if you can believe it. But for the time being, that has to wait. Somerset Isle has surrounded the city and is in the process of starving the citizenry until they surrender. It's a tiresome prospect, since the Bosmerry are happy to eat one another. So there's a risk that at the end, only one fat wood elf will remain to wave the flag. That is vexing, agreed Scotty, sympathetically. To the east, the Khajiit are burning everything. And to the west, the High Elves are waging war? I don't suppose the borders to the north are clear. They're even worse, replied Malin, finger on the page, still distracted. The Cyrodiils and Redguards don't want Bosmer refugees screaming into the provinces. It only stands to reason. Imagine how much more criminally inclined they'd be now that they're homeless and hungry. So, murmured Scotty, feeling a shiver. We're trapped in Valorwood? Not at all. I need to leave fairly shortly myself, as my publisher has set a very definite deadline for my new book of translations. From what I understand, one merely petitions to the Silvernar for special border protection, and one could cross into Cyrodiil with impunity. Petition the Silvernar or petition at Silvernar? Petition the Silvernar at Silvernar. It's an odd nomenclature that is typical of this place. The sort of thing that makes my job as a translator that much more challenging. The Silvernar, he, or rather, they, are the closest Bosmer have to a great leader. The essential thing to remember about the Silvernar, Malin smiled, finding the passage he was looking for. Here! A fortnight. Inexplicable. The world burns into a dance. There's that metaphor again. What were you saying about Silvernar? Asked Scotty. The essential thing to remember? I don't remember what I was saying, replied Malin, turning back to his oration. Alright, drink some more. In a week's time, the little boat bumped into the shallow, caramel warmers of the foaming current of Xylo, and Xylo had become. And Demicus Scotty first saw the city of Silvernar. If Faliceti was a tree, then Silvernar was a flower. A magnificent pile of faded shades of green, red, blue, and white, shining with crystalline residue. Malin had mentioned offhand, when not otherwise explaining Aldemari Posotti, that Silvernar had once been a blossoming glade in the forest, but owing to some spell or natural cause, the tree sap began flowing with translucent liquor. The process of the sap flowing and hardening over the colourful trees had formed the web of the city. Malin's description was intriguing, but it hardly prepared him for the city's beauty. What is the finest, most luxurious tavern here? Scotty asked one of the Bosmer boatmen. Pahado Hall, Malin answered. But why don't you stay with me? I'm visiting an acquaintance of mine, a scholar I think you'll find fascinating. His novel isn't much, but he has the most extraordinary, same difference, ideas about the principles of the Metheric Aldemari tribe in the Samathi. Under any other circumstance, I would happily accept, said Scotty, graciously. But after weeks of sleeping on the ground, or on a raft, and eating whatever I could scrounge, I feel the need for some indulgent creature comforts. And then, after a day or two, I'll petition the Silvernar for safe passage to Cyrodiil. The men bade each other goodbye. Griff Malin gave him the address of his publisher in the Imperial City, which Scotty accepted and quickly forgot. The clerk wandered the streets of Silvernar, crossing bridges of amber, admiring the petrified forest architecture. In front of a particularly estimable palace of silvery reflective crystal, he found Perithilar Hall. He took the finest room and ordered a gluttonous meal of the finest quality. At a nearby table he saw two very fat fellows, a man and a Bossamer, remarking how much finer the food was there than at Silvernar's palace. They began to discuss the war and some issues of finances and rebuilding. Provincial bridges. Rebuilding provincial bridges. The man noticed Scotty looking at them, and his eyes flashed recognition. Scotty, is that you? Kinnereth, where have you been? I've had to make all the contracts here on my own. At the sound of his voice, Scotty recognized him. The fat man was Leonidas Juris, vastly engorged. He found him. What is going to happen in the story next? Tune in to the next Elder Scrolls reading of Dance of Fire, Chapter 6. But for now, my name is Leo, and I'll see you next time.